This is the 40 Thrive Podcast, episode 18.
You're listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. Get exclusive access to expert advice, support, and strategies that will inspire, motivate, and give you the tools to not just survive, but thrive. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to the 40 Thrive Podcast. I'm really excited you're here. So if you're an entrepreneur or you're thinking of becoming one, this episode is absolutely for you. Katie Krimitsos is a badass powerhouse entrepreneur. But the thing I love about her is that she's constantly evolving into exactly who she wants to be at any given time in her life. So Katie's a new mom of two beautiful baby girls, but she's also the founder of Biz Women Rock and the new Meditation for Women podcast. I say new, but it's really been around for about a year now. If you're looking to relax and really get quiet with yourself, I highly recommend her Meditation for Women podcast. Katie's an entrepreneur, a growth strategist, and a business coach who is dedicated to helping women take their business to the stratosphere. She is a ball of energy that I just love to be around, and I've actually worked directly with her, and she's helped me in my business in ways I couldn't have imagined. So before we get into the conversation I had with Katie, I want to send a huge thank you to those of you who have rated and reviewed the 40 Thrive podcast on iTunes. In fact, I'd love to highlight one of those beautiful reviews. So LAHC1 said, "My favorite podcast, inspirational, motivating, entertaining. Jackie brings it all. If you're a woman over 40, this is a podcast you need to follow." Thank you so much for that review. When you rate and review the podcast, not only does it keep us going, but it helps other people discover the podcast. And so please, if you can take a couple of minutes and just head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast and give it a rating or a review. Of course, I want you to be honest with your review, but I really appreciate you taking the time and doing that. So thank you so much, LAHC1. Now, here's my conversation with the one and only Katie Krimitsos. Katie, I am so happy to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
If anyone's ever been in the 40 Thrive Facebook group, you see that there's a lot of empty nest syndrome starting. You see a lot of people changing careers and kind of wrapping up what they may consider their old life. But girl, you are just getting started.
I'm one of the crazy ones who is starting a family, right around my 40s. So I had my first daughter at 30, I think I was 36. And then I just had my second daughter literally 2 weeks before I turned 40. So yeah, I'm just at the beginning of this road.
I love it. And you know what? You're not the only one. There are plenty of women who fall into the same category. And so you're representing today the young moms, right?
I had somebody explain it to me one time. It was a friend of mine, but I was 35 and he was starting to give me hell for not having kids, and I feel like a lot of women unfortunately get that crap of, oh, you're 35. You better get close to having kids. Come on, let's go.
Wait,
right?
And it was some guy?
Right. Yeah. Don't even get me started on that. Anyway, but he had kids when he was young and he was in the middle of all these great, kid things. And I looked at him straight up and I said, listen, the way I see it, I either get my adult freedom at the beginning of my life or towards the end of my life. And I just, kind of chose to have it at the beginning. I mean, there's the fact that I didn't really even meet my husband until we were 30, there was a lot of that stuff, but I was like, okay. So I had the youth freedom as an adult and, I have plenty of friends who are 40, 43 right now and their kids are 18 and off to college. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a whole different freedom. And I'm like, that would be awesome. But, just different life.
Absolutely. And, I'm one of 13. And so I have, my oldest sister is 15 years older than I am. And then my youngest brother is 11 years younger.
Oh my God.
So there's 26 years. Yeah. Don't get me started.
But be pregnant or breastfeeding. That's a long time, girl.
Right. But my whole point is that, my parents were young parents, 19 years old. And then not so young parents. And so it's interesting because I think there are pros and cons to both sides.
Yeah.
But you tend to meet people who are so vocal with their opinion of which side it should be on,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's like, dude, this friend of mine who is like 43 and their, their last kid just went to college and they're out traveling the world. I'm like, oh, that looks so awesome. And I'm just in a different place. There are some cons to that too, so yeah.
Well, but I see that with you because, for those of my listeners who don't know you, they will now and forever because they'll follow you because they will adore you as much as I do.
Aww.
But, you are doing so many things. You are empowering women through business. You are coaching. You are creating podcasts, two totally different podcasts. You are constantly coming from a place of service. At the same time, you're there for your babies and you're doing your mom thing. And I think that I see in you kind of permission to be whatever it is that you want to be that maybe we wouldn't have been giving ourselves at 30.
Yes. I just got goosebumps when you said that because the whole time as you were describing that, what I'm so grateful for is that having waited until I was 36 to have kids was that I had a pretty damn good sense of who I was, and I feel like, not that I didn't at the age of, 20. I mean, I have always been pretty in tune with who I am. However, evolve that and fast forward that 16 years past 20, every single year I get more and more in tune with who I am and more aligned with what I'm here to do and who I want to be in this world. And so even at the age of 39, when I had Savannah, my youngest, I feel like I'm a completely different mother than I was 4 years ago. So I think that that's a massive advantage because I have known, okay, here's what's important for me. And therefore I am confident enough in myself to know how to give myself permission to do what it is that's important to me. All of these things. And it's kind of a new thing, I think, in the world of women and business and babies that we're allowed to do whatever the heck that we want versus if we wanted to, however many years ago, and this actually probably, I'm sure this still exists. I just don't live in this world. If you want to have a successful career, then your family needs to come second. Or if you want to be a great, I'm putting that in quotes, a great mom, then you need to put your career on hold. And I have just found that by knowing myself, I know that I am the one who gets to create what I want it to be. And those are all just stories that I can choose to believe in or not. And so it takes a lot of proactive work, head work, and, like physical maneuvering of lifestyle in order to create that. But I mean, we each have that power.
Right. But, you make a good point because this is not the case in all industries. And so if your goal is to be president or a partner in a law firm, it's very different than somebody who is building their own business from their home. And so there are choices to be made, in the beginning in order to have both of those areas of your life. Yeah.
Well, I say yes and no to that because while I don't believe that, I mean, look, I live in the space of entrepreneurship. And so I'm just, I am entrenched in that. However, like I knew a woman who, a very dear friend of mine who was an attorney who was, climbing up that ladder to become partner. Like this is why it's finding this exact example. And she became partner and then decided to have kids, had kids, and then realized, okay, I am going, like, because she was partner, she had the ability to like basically have a nursery in her office. And she brought her nanny in there and she was able to work there like amongst the partners. And she just made it work for a couple of years. And it worked really well for her until she then decided to open her own office. And since then has sort of created what would work for a working mom who's the partner of the partners, right? And she has like, basically a daycare provider who comes in, watches not only her kids, but anyone who works in her office X amount of days a week. And that's what she gets to create. So I think that there's, while yes, no matter what path that you're on or situation that you're in, there are absolutely parameters on on what you can or can't do, you ultimately do have the ability to like maneuver stuff, even if it's, you get to be the partner, but I mean, they're really great partners who can work with you on flexibility of schedule or whatever that is. There's always a way to get what you want.
Right. But there's something that you're saying that I definitely think we should dive into a little bit deeper is she became partner first. And so
Yes.
you have people like Sheryl Sandberg out there who's like, oh, I leave at 5. If Sheryl Sandberg were an administrative assistant or a middle manager, I can guarantee you she would not be getting home at 5 for dinner.
Yeah.
The same thing with TV. I had absolutely no flexibility. I would leave the house at 7 a.m. I would drive 2 hours one way. I would work until 7 or 8. I would drive 2 hours the other way. I love TV. I love that industry, but it wasn't necessarily working for my family. So I had to make decisions and shift things. But I think it does women a disservice when we don't talk about the realities of starting a family and wanting to be all things to all people, which is a whole other topic we'll have to get into, but not being at a level where you can really write your own ticket while you're under the roof of a larger corporation.
Yes.
And that's where I feel entrepreneurship comes in and provides both of those opportunities to be around, to do, I pick up my son from high school every single day. And this is not a judgment on people who don't, but the second I see him, I get about 10 minutes where he's going to share things that happened. And I cherish that so much. Yeah. But guess what? I then come home and work my ass off for the rest of the afternoon. Yeah. And so it's all about flexibility. But I do want to at least give a acknowledgement to those who aren't necessarily in a position at a corporation or at a job where they haven't necessarily reached the level where they want to be and they feel like they're kind of stuck.
Yeah. And definitely feeling that pull, right? Like, how do I do all of this? And I don't have 100% control. That's the thing about entrepreneurship. You do ultimately have 100% control over what your professional life looks like. You don't if you're working a job. And I've been there. I've been in corporate, and you don't. Like, there's only a certain amount of things that you can do before you start figuring out, like, okay, you start doing the question of like, okay, if this is really that important to me, now I really have to make some tough decisions here, right?
Right. So you've been working with women who, you probably see this all the time, who are leaving corporate America, leaving a job, trying to start something. I believe, and I know you do, that we all have gifts that can serve us as our own business. I love entrepreneurship. I sometimes question why I didn't become one earlier in my career. I just have that personality. I always said, like, I'm an entrepreneur without a product. I don't know what to do. I just know that I want to do it. And, there's that whole phrase that like entrepreneurs will work 80 hours a week just to avoid working 40 for someone else.
Yeah.
But do you believe that there's an entrepreneur in all of us?
No, I don't think I do. Because I feel, if that were true, I mean, who are actually the employees of all of these businesses that we're starting? Like, I feel like each of us have a personality that lends itself to a specific type of professional life. And I think it's just our job as women, if you want to consider it an entrepreneurial spirit, like, I think it's our job as women to figure out what we love best and how we can best be of service in a professional space. So no, I don't think that every single woman is made for entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is not better or worse than corporate and vice versa. It's just like who fits where, like I have a handful of friends who look at me and they're like, I have no idea how you do what you do. It's so unconventional. It's so outside of the box. It's so like risky. And, like, it's been over 10 years since I've received a regular paycheck every 2 weeks. And that is a major shift in mindset and lifestyle. And it's, I'm incredibly comfortable with it. I love it. And there are plenty of people who don't. And it's not just because of, it's not because it's better or worse. It's just so different. And, the one friend I'm thinking of in particular is a phenomenal employee. Like, we've actually had the conversation where I'm like, oh my God, when I get to this level, like, I need you, I'm going to bring you on and this is what you're going to do. And she thrives doing that. She would not thrive leading and being a CEO. That's just not who she is. But at the end of the day, I think that every woman does have the ability to design her own life. If you want to kind of step back into the more 30,000 foot view, like you do have the power, and every single woman has a capability to design her own life.
I love that because it doesn't always look like entrepreneurship. Just like if somebody told me I had to be an accountant for the rest of my life, I would cry every morning, or a lawyer or something, serious and valuable that I just don't want to do,
Yep.
But I think it's really important for us to find the thing that helps us leap out of bed and makes us excited and happy. And,
Yes.
and I love doing that. But this is a bigger topic. This is not just about what we do for work that you're talking about when it comes to designing our own life. Can you give me a little bit more of what you mean about that?
Yeah. I can speak about this so powerfully right now, but yet I'm very aware that it's, I think, language and a way of living that has been developing in me for 40 years now, which is a very low tolerance for unhappiness, and therefore a desire to follow a fire, right? Like a desire in my life to follow what brings me happiness and what I'm excited about. And I'm very grateful that I have parents who encourage that and help structure that in me. Meaning they raised 6 kids, so not, as many as yours, but I got 6 kids. It was a lot before I met you.
Big family, high five still.
Big family. And so, they raised 6 kids very interdependently, meaning like they were, we were dependent on them, but they raised us to be very independent thinkers and independent people in this world. And so at a very early age, I was used to, or started practicing making decisions on, do I want this or do I want this, based on what I really wanted. And guess what? Sometimes that decision that I made was wrong. And a year later, it was like, dude, that was not what I really wanted. But now I'm at a different place and I learned from it. Now what decision now, right? So I guess some sort of a backdrop to this is the fact that over 40 years, I've been put in situations, as I'm sure you have listening, and I know you have, Jackie, every single person has. I'm like, what do I do? Right? Like, this situation is coming up. What do I do? And now I have to make a decision on that. And every decision I've made has helped me realize, like, it's normal human behavior. You feel good. I want more of that. That feels bad. I want less of that. So, so this idea of designing your own life, entrepreneurship was a giant and has been a giant factor in that, because it's been a manner in which, a methodology in which I can actually enact that, have my freedom to design how I want to bring in money, to design how I want to be a professional, to design how I want to be of service in this world in a way that looks like a business, right? And so, 10 plus years of entrepreneurship now, I have tried to figure out and knowingly been on a journey of like, what do I want this to look like? And even in the space of business, by the way, there's no one size of business. It's like, well, what kind of business model do I want? What kind of services do I want to provide? How do I want to provide them? Like, what feels good to me versus what all the other templates out there are telling me? And then, this other whole component called a family life. Well, what feels good to me in there? So I know I'm talking very broadly, but all of those pieces, I always follow my joy. And I think that sounds so cliche, but it's so true. Like, what makes me happy and how can I get more of that? And I'm sitting here talking to you, a relatively newer mother of a 4-month-old and a toddler, 3.5. And the decisions I'm making now with a 4-month-old were very different. And what I want is very different than when my older girl was 4 months old. And so we just keep evolving. And so I'm a big believer that as long as we keep tuning in to like who we are, what we want, like, and really making decisions out of that, we can't go wrong. And we just start seeing and piecing together this life that we really love.
One of the things I really respect about you is your transparency. And, in your Biz Women Rock Facebook group, which if you're a woman in business, you should be in that already. But you are so honest when you make a decision that may work, may not work, may work for a short time. Mm-hmm. But you are so honest and open about, hey, I made this choice. it's not paying off the way I thought maybe it would. So I'm going to shift over and make another choice. And that's one of the things that my husband and I agreed to a billion years ago when we got married was, if we make a decision and it's not working, let's make a new decision.
Yes.
It's not like you have to beat yourself up like, oh, I was wrong, I'm a failure. I will tell you right now, I went through that this week where I just posted on Instagram, sometimes you feel like you're failing, but in actuality, you're just at the beginning. Like, why are we always like, why do we start something? Can you imagine if we started running and we're like, I didn't finish a marathon in my first week? Like, nobody would ever do that. But yet in business, we do that. We try something and it doesn't pay off right away and we start beating ourselves up. But you talk very openly and honestly in your group with your clients, which I have happened to be one, about some of the choices that you make. Was that always something that you were able to do? Or when did you realize that vulnerability wasn't something to run away from?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, thank you for that. That's very kind of you to say all of that. And the response that I get, because I humbly hear that a lot, the response that I find myself giving a lot is, I don't know any other way to be. I learned the lesson very, very early on that I don't know how to show up fake. I tried that in junior high and it didn't work for very long. So
we all tried it in junior high, my friend.
Yeah, God. So I feel like I've always been an infant, a kid, a toddler, a kid, a teenager who just sort of spoke my mind and would learn whether that was acceptable or not based on other people's opinions, right? Or their reactions. And so sometimes I would choose to stuff it away or shy away, or sometimes I would be like, okay, I don't care if they don't like me, whatever, I'll just do my own thing. But I can remember one point in particular. I was in college, and I just remember this because this was like an enlightening moment for me. And I remember I must have been a freshman, so 18, 19 years old. And I'm talking to a girlfriend and I'm telling her about some moment of doubt. I don't even remember. Maybe it had to do with boys. I mean, everything seemed to be about boys back then. But like, I remember I told her something about something that was really hard for me to deal with. And, oh, this is challenging or blah, blah, blah. And I remember she looked at me and she was like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one who felt that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then we continued on this incredibly connecting and electric conversation. And that was the first time. So at 18, 19 years old, I was really aware, wow, when I share something deep or vulnerable or just very authentic about myself, it has the power to connect. So I never connected vulnerability with pain. I always connected it with connection and depth and togetherness and love, ultimately. And, she and I are still friends to this day. And she still tells me that, will give that back to me. Like, God, Kitty, you just have the ability to like make me feel like I'm not alone. And I guess for me, that's something, if you had to ask me like what my number one gift is, I think that's it, is that I just, at the end of the day, really want us all to feel connected and that you're not alone and that we all go through this stuff, whatever this stuff is. And I wouldn't say that I'm particularly good at being able to do that. I just am super comfortable being open and being vulnerable, but I do it with a very real intention to connect.
Right. You do so much marketing for your business online in a space where everything is shellacked and pretty and, photoshopped. And so to show up as yourself, you're really kind of disrupting the industry a little bit. And, some people, well, I have to give you an example. So I ran a program and somebody had said to me, honestly meaning it as a compliment, but she said, what I love about you is you don't have to show up perfectly. You just do it anyway. And my ego was like, but I know she meant it as you're giving me permission to do my thing and not be perfect at it. Mm-hmm. And you were like the little Katie on my shoulder who was like, imperfect action in your perfectly cheery voice. But that's one thing. I mean, if I could say the most important thing that I have learned from you, one of them is the ability to show up in imperfect action, because we spend a lot of time, we could talk about business, but also in life, where we don't jump because we need to know the temperature of the water. We need to know how deep it is. We need to know, if anyone's peed in it in the last 48 hours. Like, we need to have all the details before we take a dive into the pool. And you are not that person. You're like, jump, girl, jump, So has that always, it's amazing because you have the vulnerability side, but you also have the stop thinking about it and just do it for already.
So I would like to sit here and pretend to you that I'm this amazing person who understands to move beyond perfectionism and just go. But everything that you just described has been a learned skill. I think something that actually was innate in me, and I'll describe why. But it's been a learned skill and a muscle that I've deliberately strengthened over all the years, because I am a perfectionist and I am somebody who has stopped myself from jumping into things or starting things because I'm too scared, or because, perfectionism veils itself as getting prepared for way too long, right? So two things here. First is that I don't know why this exists, but I really want to get the most out of this life. I am amazingly aware that there's only a certain amount of years that we have here. And I don't want to waste that time. And I have a mother who I grew up with who, in contrast to the don't look at my driver's license, don't ever show anyone or tell anyone how old you are woman, that was not my mom. My mom was like, every year, I'm so excited to turn 32. I'm so excited to turn 64. She's just that woman who lived, both my parents, they just live in the juice of life. They live so presently. And so that was my motto growing up. So why would I ever feel shameful about aging? There's none of that. Why would I ever feel weird about all that stuff? And they also instilled in me this desire of just follow what you love and money will follow. Follow what you love and everything will figure itself out. So I want to have a lot of experiences in life. I want to collect memories and experiences and hugs and laughter. I've always been like that. And then I will say that my husband is somebody who has really enhanced that significantly in my life. Because even with that personality of mine, I absolutely can be, I also have this other side of me, this might sound really ooh, super creative, and yes, she does everything and fearless, but I absolutely have the side of my personality that is super organized, and let's figure out every detail, and let's not press go until it's good. Let's make 1,000% sure that this is going to work before I even go there and trade this thing out with that. And so when my husband came into my life, when we were 30, he just was this breath of fresh air of throw caution to the wind. What do you have to lose? And he's that constant voice in my head of he's got this great term called start ugly. Just start ugly. Just start, because you don't know. Isn't that a great term?
I love it.
Because he just says, he's you just don't know. And when I met him, he was just starting a business, but he had, at the age of 30, he had already been running some sort of businesses since he was in his teens. So there's this certain concept of he came to the table already in our relationship of being somebody who is relatively carefree and uncaring about the stable, quote unquote, things in life. Those things didn't matter. What mattered was people and experiences and what you're going to do in this world. And you can't do that if you're going to stay behind perfectionism. So he constantly, still to this day, I'll give you this a great example. I'm having hardcore, stupid tech issues with Buffer and my scheduled posts for social media, right? And it's been 2 weeks now and it's not working, which means that my assistant can't do it. And I've been trying to work it out. I've been trying to maintain it myself, whatever. And he's like, Katie, why don't you just have her go create the content and you just have to go pull it out? Just think a workaround until it gets fixed. I'm like, oh yeah. He's just that guy who's always just go, just try, let's do it. And so he enhances that tremendously in me.
That's so important, because whether it's a significant other or a sibling or a parent or a neighbor or some stranger on the internet, we all need someone in our corner. And I find a lot of times there are women, especially women over 40 that I meet, who want to try things and they don't have that support, and it's super hard. It is hard enough when you have support. So my husband's going to kill me, but I want to share something with you
Woohoo.
yesterday. So when you were trying to start your own business, and I really am at the beginning of starting my own business, really, when you think about like the long-term game,
Yeah.
it can sometimes, it's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So I sent him a text yesterday and I said, I'm really trying to push through, babe. This is so hard. And I'm really fighting against so much self-doubt. And it took everything in me to send that, but I needed to get it out so I could kind of move on from it. Because if you just sit with it and you judge yourself for it, it increasingly gets worse. So I have to tell you how he responded. And I'm a little teary. He said, I know you are. Please believe me when I say you're killing it. I support you 100%. We never know how long or hard we have to push before we break through a barrier to success. I just know you can't stop.
I'm crying. Oh, I love him.
Seriously, like that was exactly what I needed. I mean, people need to understand that we can put stuff out there. We can be like, join my new program and this and that. And, maybe the first day, 2 people show up and then one of them backs out or whatever it is. I mean, ultimately it grows, little by little and it works out. But there's so much self-doubt and there's so much fear that it's okay. So if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, they're talking about being entrepreneurs and making, if I hear one more person, like 6 figures used to be enough. Now all the freaking marketing people are like 7 figures. I'm like, son of a bitch, I just got to 6. Like, slow
I just got
down.
my head wrapped around that one. Come on.
Right? It's replace your income and this and that. Well, if your income was pretty good and you're not even close to replacing it, I get it. I totally get it. So I think one of the really important things that we can do is to be honest about the process and to be honest about the fear.
Yes.
You mentioned the word fearless. I think the word fearless is absolute bullshit.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. I'm 100% in agreement with you because fear comes up no matter what. Like there is fear. It's about how you react to it and what you decide to do with it. But I want to make sure to address this. The exact point that you brought out, which is it's so important, no matter where you are in this journey, and I don't know what this journey is for you, but no matter where you are in this journey, it's transitional, it's transformative, it's evolving, and it's so important to have that inner circle with you. And this is like that inner circle of people, just like your husband is for you. And I have like my inner circle of people that I tell kind of like the worst of the worst to. And oh my God, I'm, and believe me, Jackie, 10 plus years into this journey, this business journey, I still have self-doubt. Oh my God, is that the right thing? Are people going to like me this way? All of that stuff still comes up. It just looks a little different, or it still comes up and now I know what to do with that right away. Right. But it still comes up and I still need I still need my inner circle to help me through it, because answers like your husband gave you are invaluable, because what they do is they completely blow up that wall that is just stood in front of you. And now you can walk through it just with one text, right? And so it's so important to have, that's why the 40 Thrive community, by the way, if you're not currently a member of the Facebook group, please go join. But like, that's the value that, just as an example, just that one tool has, is that there's a group of women, 40 years plus, who are in the space that Jackie has created with the beautifully open and caring and nurturing and loving and accepting culture that you've established there, Jackie.
Oh, thank you.
And that's where you can go and find that inner circle. Because if you don't have it, it's really easy to fall off the path of where you want to be taking yourself, or just crumble and feel really alone and isolated. And that's no fun. So that inner circle is vital.
Absolutely. Because I feel like there's such a conflict, right? So we talk about no better time than over 40, and you can prioritize, and you look at the world in a different way, and it's so great. But on the flip side, your body is like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to produce those hormones anymore. All of these other things that you may or may not be going through. And so it's really conflicting to be feeling like you're at the end of something and yet trying to remind yourself that you're just at the beginning of something.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think it's really important to be able to be honest and go, oh, wait, today I feel like a rock star and tomorrow I feel like shit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And perfect example, like, and, you know, I do a lot of mindset work, which means that I do a lot internally to help shape my mind so that the world I see is that, right? Which means that I am constantly bucking a story called, you can't have a new baby and a thriving business. And I want to, there's a gazillion other stories that I'm combating all the time or recreating or restoring, right? But that's one in particular I'm going to identify because I'm like, no, I'm not going to slow down. I'm not going to slow down. Like, I'm not going to believe that. I'm going to still be a phenomenal mother who gets the quality time with both my girls that I want. And I'm still going to have this thriving, growing business that makes an impact in the world and makes a dent in my family's income, right? Like that's my goal. I'm a little bit of a rebel by design. So it's like, no, I'm bucking against that system, right? Now I say that and that sounds really pretty, but the everyday of that, Jackie, is not so pretty sometimes because there are sometimes when, you know, I had a babysitter scheduled to be able to go off and do some work. And guess what? My oldest got sick. And so boom, there goes that. Like, no, I need to be the one to be with her. Like, and so, you know, no work getting done during that particular day or, you know, there are very real things that are making me slow down right now. And I simultaneously love that. And I'm so frustrated by it because I want to run at a gazillion miles a minute in my business right now. And so I have to find peace there. So, it's so multifaceted and multidimensional that, and it's real. And that's, again, it's a tricky space, right? It's a tricky age. It's a tricky time of life.
Right. You touched upon 2 points that I want to bring up. One of them, mindset, and the other one, finding peace. And so one of my favorite things to discover are, you know, new products and services that were created specifically by women who felt a need in their life to have this thing and it wasn't actually available to them. So they're like, screw it, I'm going to invent it myself, right? So there are so many things out there. You know, what is it, like the necessity is the, I don't know, I forget the phrase.
The key to all invention, something like that.
Something like that. But you, as this, like, when I think of you, I think of you as like a cheerful, smart Tasmanian devil.
Thank you. I think my husband would agree with you, actually.
But, you know, last year, meditation has always been something that's extremely important to you. You talk about the benefits of getting quiet. And so there was not necessarily something that was out there that really spoke to you. So you're like, hey, I'm not busy making babies and having businesses, that I'm going to create something called Meditation for Women. So can you tell my listeners, I know that they're going to be all over this. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, I
feel like we have to bring down our voices and get really calm while we talk about this.
I know. So
here we go.
Namaste, beautiful.
In through your nose, Katie.
I know. This really starts with, I'll give you the brief story that will give you the backdrop of it. So I was Tasmanian deviling it through my business, Biz Women Rock, loving every second of it. You know, timestamp was a year ago, early 2018, and was really on track to triple my business for the year. Was super excited about it. It was legit happening. And then we found out we were pregnant, which wasn't unplanned, but it wasn't according to my plan, which was supposed to happen later on in the year. Hello. But apparently that wasn't the case. So we got pregnant and then it all changed all of a sudden. Cause all of a sudden I was like, oh, this thing that I had planned here. Yeah, I'm actually going to be like 9 months pregnant at that time. Or this thing that I planned here, I'm actually going to have like a 3-week-old at that time. So hang on here. And what I had been planning in my business, in Biz Women Rock business, was very high touch, super high quality, super high touch, i.e. lots of me showing up at a certain time in order to deliver services. And all of a sudden I was just like, I don't think I can, or I don't think I want to do that. It's not that I couldn't. I'm like, that feels like that's not the right thing for this phase of my life I'm about to enter. So I got really depressed about it. I got to be honest with you. I got really depressed for two reasons. Number one, because I was like, I don't know what's ahead. And number two, I didn't know how to deal with what was currently going on, like all the promotions that were needing to happen right then and there in order for the next phase to happen in my business, right? Like I literally just sort of like paused. And so for about 7 weeks, I literally did nothing like other than I didn't promote anything. I didn't open up anything new. I just kind of dealt with whatever I was dealing with in the business, or just, like serviced whatever I was doing in the process of doing at that point. And I allowed myself to be super quiet. And I allowed myself to go. I also wasn't feeling very well either. I was in the first trimester yucks. So I was going on a lot of walks with my husband. And thankfully, as part of my inner circle, he just lets me vent. And one day I'd be like super excited about continuing with Biz Women Rock in this manner. And the next day I'd be like, I don't want to do this. I just want to maybe I'll just be the stay-at-home mom, and I don't know. And so he would just hear me and let me talk it out. And during one of our walks, I was like, maybe I'll do that meditation idea that I had. And earlier on in the year, I'd had this idea when I was sort of brainstorming out, what would happen over 2018. I had thought about a meditation podcast for women. And at the time it seemed really great, but it was also like maybe number 4 or 5 on my priority list. And so I just never did anything with it. And he loved it when I had mentioned it to him all those months earlier. His eyes got all, like, oh my God, that's it. That's the idea. And so now fast forward, we're on this walk and I'm like, maybe I should do something with that. And he's like, yes, please. And it just became a space for me to start thinking about it and talking it out. And what if, and here's what it could look like. And there were 2 major reasons why it made a ridiculous amount of sense for me. Number one was that my number one goal and intention through my business has always been to lift women up. And I got in that moment that this was a new vehicle, and actually a broader vehicle for me to reach even more women. Because now I was doing the exact opposite of what most of us business coaches actually suggest, which is niche down, right? Like I was actually like, oh, I'm going to cast a wider net here. I'm going from women entrepreneurs to women. Like that's a giant upgrade of a niche, right?
Right.
So, but it was in line with what I'm here to do. It was, more women being lit up, like more women lifting each other up, finding confidence, like really shining. And so I knew that fit. And then the second reason was I had strategized enough by that point to understand that it was a completely different business model, meaning it didn't require me to show up live for things. Like it was not a coaching model. I wasn't going to be showing up one-on-one with people. I could create product on my computer at the time that was convenient for me and still be able to market it. I could basically have time freedom, and that Biz Women Rock does not have that. Like I have very little of that. And that's been by design all these years. But all of a sudden I was like, well, the life I'm about to have with a newborn and a toddler, that would be really awesome to have time freedom, just to be able to decide when I want to be mommy and when I want to work, and be able to have total freedom over that. So those 2 things made it totally an automatic yes for me to say yes to. And then it was just a matter of the logistics of it. So Meditation for Women, which is really under the whole banner of the Women's Meditation Network, is the first podcast that came out, and it launched back in July of 2018, and it has gone gangbusters. Like literally, the stats I looked at last night, I think I'm just about to hit about 90,000 downloads for this whole time.
Wow,
my numbers have
and that's for your
doubled.
Podcast.
That's for just the podcast.
Right. We're not even talking about because you have meditations on Insight Timer and other,
Yeah.
So we're just talking about the podcast.
Just the podcast on Insight Timer. Gosh, the last time I looked, so that's a whole different platform, right? Like an app that anyone can go to and listen to a lot of meditations. And so I'm on there as a teacher, and I've put a handful of my meditations on there. Just one of them has like 34,000 downloads.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing.
It just has clicked, right? And I didn't do this haphazardly. Let me be straight about that. Like when I realized like, okay, this is what I want to do, it then got into like, what's the best strategy? What's the market look like out there? How should I design this? Who am I really wanting to appeal to? All that stuff. So, but the point being is that it's taken off, and it's, just my numbers can like literally between last month and this month have doubled in downloads. From the podcast, and it continues to grow 20 to 50% every single month.
Wow.
So, so I think I got onto something, right?
You think?
Yeah. And so now I'm at the, humbly speaking, like I'm sort of at the beginning, like I'm kind of back in the beginning entrepreneur phases where I'm like, okay, I'm at the beginning of this business model. I now have an audience. And that's in addition to an Instagram community of just about 12,000 people right now. And so I have all these audiences, which are amazing. And now it's about building out the business that it will support. So, yeah. And again, and by the way, and I'm still managing Biz Women Rock. I still see clients there, but I very consciously minimized my offerings there, minimized what I was doing there so that I could still spend the time doing what I loved most there, which is one-on-one coaching, which I still do and I still offer, and make a lot more space for the meditation business.
Right. And there are a lot of people who think either A, if you want to live your life lifting other women up, that you're supposed to do that for free, and not actually make a great living off of it, which is ridiculous. But, the other thing too is some people will start a podcast or have massive growth like you have, and then look at that like that's the success. But ultimately, you're building this so then you can offer other products that will support your family and support the community who already loves your meditations.
Yeah. And, I'm a mindset, and believe me, this has taken work to get to, but I'm of a mindset of a holistically abundant life, which means I give and I receive, and which means that I'm constantly thinking about what does she now need? Like my listener, what does she now need? What does she now need? And so, just by nature of me being a business owner, I'm constantly thinking of like, okay, what can I create that in turn for the value she gets out of this thing, she's going to give me money. And guess what? We're all happy. She's happy. I'm happy. My family's happy. It's partaking in a larger good. Like it's all good. Like money's awesome. Money's just one wonderful way of the world telling me that what I do and what I'm putting out there has value.
So you don't have to spend a dime with me. There's plenty of free stuff out there. But if you wanted to, you could have access to a Peaceful Sleep Collection, which is my very first product that I'll be coming out with here in the next week or two. And that is 3 very specific guided meditations that are 35 minutes to an hour long that are all revolving around sleep. So, and you could spend however much you're going to spend on it and you can get more. So it's just a matter of like, there's plenty of free stuff out there. You can get more from me if you want. It benefits the people who do want it, and it benefits me and my family because I get to be compensated for the gift that I'm giving.
Absolutely. And I know that for me, as far as meditation goes, I have visions and ideas and fantasies of stopping in the middle of the day and doing it for 5 or 10 minutes. I actually did yesterday, but I have to do it more consistently.
Yeah.
But when it comes to sleep, almost every night I will put on a sleep meditation.
Yep.
So now I can go to yours. Actually, I love yours on Insight Timer as well and your podcast. But to have that package, if that's your priority, I love that. And I love that you really I feel like you understand me and your followers and your listeners, because you often talk about, the entrepreneur brain and how it's racing, or we're juggling families and all of the challenges that we go through. So when you offer something, I always feel like it comes from a place of service and not you just trying to sell me something. And I think that's really something a lot of people could learn from.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I have just been in this space long enough to know that, sales is service. And if I just have a widget that I don't have any passion about, and I'm just trying to figure out the best way for you to click it and press buy, like for me, that's not fulfilling. That does work for some other people. For me, that's not fulfilling. And so, yeah, like it really does have to come from a place of like this, I really truly feel like this will help you or give you something that you want.
Right. And I think that meditation is definitely a way to quiet our brains. I mean, that's just scientifically proven, but will help us kind of work through some of the anxiety, at least we can feel when we just don't know what each day will bring in our lives over 40. And so I think meditation is extremely important because I see the benefit. It's like going to the gym, you don't necessarily want to get up and put on those sneakers, but you do because you feel so much stronger and better. And meditation can make us all feel stronger and more at peace with ourselves and our lives.
Yep. And, super straight up and vulnerable here. Like I see, it's not that I'm ridiculously passionate about meditation. I mean, I am. I love meditation. I've been meditating ever since I was 20 years old, and it's always been a really powerful tool in my life. And I need to say, like, I've gone through seasons of it. Like there are sometimes, I'm not like the daily meditator for the past 20 years. That's not me. Like sometimes I'll meditate every day for months, and sometimes I'll go months without meditating at all. So, like it's imperfect for me, which I want to be able to get across. But for me, meditation is just a vehicle, a very powerful vehicle for me to share my message. And I know, Jackie, that you do this through podcasting. And I am here doing it through podcasting, but it's done in the form of a meditation. And I'll give you a really crisp story on when I got this. So my process for doing these meditations is that I will sit down and I will start writing. I'll write it out like, I'm talking about, I'll talk about the one that I did this for. It was one of my very first meditations called You Are Extraordinary, a Daily Reminder.
That's one of my favorites.
Thank you. And still one of my favorites too. And I remember sitting down and writing it. First off, because, you talk about like my approach to meditation. I was looking and creating something that you couldn't find in the marketplace. Like I realized that every time I was going to Insight Timer or I was going to search for a meditation somewhere that I needed, that I needed something to speak to me in the language of like, this is the message I need to hear right now, or this is what I'm feeling that I need to get rid of, or something like that. And that's not what exists out in meditation world. What exists is meditation speak, right? Like, here's the clearing your chakra meditation or enlivening your body meditation, which is all great. It's wonderful. And I could figure out quite easily what it is that I need. But I was like, man, like right now I don't feel extraordinary and I just need to be reminded of that. And so I remember sitting down, I was writing out that meditation and I take you through this beautiful guided visualization, and halfway through I started crying and I was like, oh my God. And my husband happened to call right then and there and he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, babe, I just realized how powerful this is because it's a meditation and I'm guiding women through this space where they're opening up their mind to the words that I'm saying. I get to tell women how amazing they are in this space of consciousness. And they get to listen and they get to ingest it and they get to shine from the inside out because of my words. Like, do you get how big this is? And he's like, yeah, beautiful. I got it the whole time. I got it, Katie. And it's like, of course.
You got it way before you did.
Of course. But to me, that's what this is. Like, I get to tell you how beautiful you are, and it has nothing to do with your looks. I get to tell you how powerful you are, and I also get to tell you that it's okay when you feel like crap and you feel like you're not good enough. I also have a meditation on that, like, you are enough, because there are plenty of mornings or evenings.
That's my other favorite. I love that you pulled out those two.
Yeah. Those are some of my most popular ones because they're things that are so universal for so many women, unfortunately or fortunately. And I just feel like I get to be a messenger who gets to share that through this tool of meditation.
And it's amazing. And I'm so glad that you are coming up with ways to package this, because I believe that we are all in need of this. Even if you're not someone who meditates, calming your brain, knowing you're enough, getting back to center with who you are and why you do what you do, they are all so important with so much chaos. Many listeners have teenagers and, kids who are going off to college and, it's tough to pay those bribes and things like that in the meantime. But so there's a lot of stress. But, when you take 10 minutes to yourself and just breathe and listen to your words, I just think it's the very definition of self-care.
Yes. Yep. And I guess my ultimate belief is like, if I can help eradicate, not just soften, but eradicate self-doubt, lack of confidence, uneasiness, all that negative crap that is ultimately what imprisons us from really being our best selves, then holy cow, what a global change that we can make in this world. Because if every woman unleashes herself from those shackles, oh my God, watch out. Like that's the kind of change that I'm here to make. And it happens with each individual meditation.
That is awesome. So Katie, I want to know, where can people find you? What do you have? I just want to get everything that you have for free and give you all of my money and tell me all the ways that we can work with you.
So for all of the meditation stuff right now, literally there's nothing you can buy from me because, this is the part of me being patient and just figuring it out as I go along. And things not having to be perfect. So, but you can go and subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcast player you listen to. My favorite recently is called Podcoin. You actually get paid to listen, which is super cool. But you can go. Yeah, it's a really awesome tool. But go find the podcast Meditation for Women. Go subscribe. Every single Tuesday, I come out with a brand new meditation for you. And literally, I've had listeners just say, this is my library. It doesn't matter what day it is. Every morning I just go and I look at my library of Katie's meditations and which one do I need to hear today, right? So just go listen to them, enjoy them, let them really move you. And then if you want the sleep collection when it comes out, you're more than welcome to get that. And then separately with the Biz Women of Rock arena, I still have clients that I work with. And so if you happen to be a woman entrepreneur listening to this and you do want to really design a business that supports your whole lifestyle and what you really want, and you want the intuitive, holistic business strategy concept on how to do that, then that's what I work with women through.
Awesome. And, even in 3 months that we worked together last year, I launched 2 programs.
Yep.
One of them for podcasting and one of them the 40 Thrive Reboot. Both of them extremely successful.
Woo.
And I hosted a full day event all under your support and mentorship. So it's funny because I remember it was around that time I said to my husband, I just feel like I'm not doing enough. And he just started laughing at me. And I told you, and you were like, will you please look at your calendar and everything that you've pulled off in the last 3 months?
You're doing plenty, girl. You're doing plenty.
Yeah. So, but I'm just saying that with your help, I am a firm believer in mentorship and coaching, however that looks, whether it's paid or it's your cousin or the neighbor down the street who may be ahead of you in the same type of business. Find some way to really develop those skills and to work with somebody who's further along than you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always learn so much when we are outside of ourselves or we have somebody to help see outside of what we can see by ourselves. So I thoroughly love doing that. It lights me up every single time with every single client that I've had the privilege to work with.
That's awesome. And then before we go, something I ask all of my guests, what does it mean to you to 40 Thrive?
Oh, I just light, shining, beaming, totally unapologetic about the life that I'm building and the choices that I'm making. That's what it means to me.
Beautiful. Katie Krimitsos, thank you so much.
Jackie, thank you so much. It has been such an honor and such a pleasure to be here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the 40 Thrive podcast. If you're looking for some more strategies, tips, and tricks, don't forget to head on over to 40thrive.com and download your free 10 tips to start thriving today. I created those specifically to help you take bite-sized nuggets and be able to change your life one small step at a time. So go to 40thrive.com and just download it there and let me know what you think. And if you haven't already, join us over on Facebook in our private Facebook group to connect with other women who are just as passionate about thriving in this age and stage of life. I'll catch you next time. Until then, keep thriving.
Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut.